The wind screamed against the brick walls of Maplewood Middle School, rattling windows and sending a shiver through the hallways. Snow piled high outside, a heavy blanket that muted the world and trapped warmth beneath layers of cold silence. Miss Clara Bennett stood in the middle of the bustling main hall, trying to shake off the morning chill as she cradled her coffee. The steam rose slowly, disappearing into the air, but Clara barely noticed. Her attention was fixed on a single figure at the edge of the crowd. Owen Collins, the new boy in her 7th grade homeroom, stood near a dimly lit corner, as if hoping the shadows would swallow him whole. His shoulders hunched beneath a too-thin jacket, threadbare and faded, the kind that might once have been vibrant but had long since given up the fight. Every gust of wind that seeped through the building seemed to find him, leaving him shivering and pale. Clara's heart ached. In her years of teaching, she had seen many children come and go, some with bright, eager eyes, others with guarded expressions. But Owen was different. He moved like a ghost, flinching at loud sounds and slipping through the halls as if he expected to be forgotten. There was a stillness about him that set her on edge, a quiet desperation hidden behind the way he clutched his battered backpack like a lifeline. As Clara watched, a group of boys ran past, jostling and laughing. One of them accidentally bumped into Owen, barely noticing as the smaller boy stumbled back, his shoes skidding across the tile. Owen regained his balance and adjusted his bag, his face blank. He didn't speak up, didn't meet anyone's gaze, just lowered his eyes and edged closer to the wall. It wasn't just shyness, it was as if he had accepted invisibility as his safest shield. The sight triggered memories. Clara had tried to bury the sting of threadbare clothes, the humiliation of standing apart. She remembered cold winters spent pretending she wasn't cold, her mother's whispered assurances that next year would be better. The memories tightened her resolve. No child should have to weather the cold alone, in body or spirit. After school ended and the building emptied, Clara slipped out into the biting wind. She navigated the narrow streets, passing rows of small, weary houses. At the thrift store, she combed through racks of winter clothes, her fingers numb from more than just the cold. She selected a dark blue coat lined with thick fleece, sturdy enough to guard against the harshest chill. As she held it up, a flash of hesitation gripped her. Would Owen accept it? Would he see it as pity? Clara shook her head. The choice had already been made. This was about warmth, about kindness, nothing more and nothing less. The next morning, Clara arrived early and placed the coat, along with matching gloves and a wool hat, inside a simple paper bag. She added a handwritten note for someone who deserves to be warm. No strings attached. She placed it on Owen's desk, carefully folded so it would blend in with his schoolwork. If he wanted to pretend he'd found it himself, he could. Dignity mattered as much as warmth. When the bell rang, students trickled in, bringing with them bursts of cold air and hurried conversations. Clara pretended to be busy sorting papers, though her focus was entirely on the door. When Owen entered, his eyes went straight to the bag. He paused, frozen mid-step. The room buzzed around him, oblivious. Slowly, he walked to his desk and touched the bag as if it might vanish. He opened it carefully, his fingers trembling. Clara stole a glance. Owen's face was a mask of disbelief, his eyes darting around the room. He read the note once, twice, then crumpled it in his hand as if afraid someone would see. Carefully, he packed the coat away. When he looked up, their eyes met for a fleeting second. Clara gave a small, encouraging smile. Owen quickly turned away, but not before she saw the glimmer of something beneath the surface, something fragile and precious, fighting to break free. Throughout the day, Owen barely touched the bag. At recess, he lingered in the classroom, and Clara pretended not to notice as he finally unwrapped the coat and ran his fingers over the fleece lining. He slipped it on slowly, as though it might shatter. When he tugged on the gloves, they swallowed his thin hands, but warmth crept back into his cheeks. He adjusted the hat, covering his reddened ears. For a brief, unguarded moment, he closed his eyes, a small smile ghosting across his lips. The transformation wasn't immediate. Owen still moved cautiously, still flinched when other students passed too closely. But Clara saw the way he touched the coat's hem when he thought no one was looking, the way he walked with a little less hunch in his shoulders. She saw it when he lingered after class, eyeing the classroom library but stopping himself from reaching for a book. Over time, small changes began to ripple through Owen's life. Clara watched as Mia, one of her most outgoing students, started sitting near him at lunch. She had a way of drawing people in, her laughter bright and contagious. At first, Owen barely spoke, responding with nods and quiet gestures. But Mia was relentless, weaving him into conversations with gentle persistence. Clara caught glimpses of their exchanges, Mia sharing her sandwich, Owen offering a tentative smile. It was fragile, but it was something. One day, during a science lesson, Clara announced a group project on ecosystems. She paired Owen with Mia, sensing that familiarity might help him open up. The two spent afternoons piecing together a model forest, crafting tiny trees and rivers out of clay. Clara noticed Owen's eyes light up as he explained why certain animals needed shelter during winter. He spoke softly but passionately, and Mia listened with genuine interest. "Owen, you're really good at this," she said one day, admiration clear in her voice. He glanced at her, startled, then shrugged. But Clara saw the way his shoulders straightened, how he leaned a little closer to the project. Slowly, the walls Owen had built began to crack. He shared small pieces of himself, stories of camping trips with his mom, the way she taught him to identify different tree species. Clara listened quietly, offering gentle encouragement. She knew healing wasn't linear, and that grief lingered like a stubborn winter. But as the days passed, the shy boy with the too thin jacket became someone more, a boy who laughed, who shared, who reached for hope even when it scared him. The winter coat was more than just fabric and warmth. It was a bridge, a promise that he wasn't alone. And in the hands of a compassionate teacher and a persistent friend, it became the start of something neither of them could have foreseen, a journey toward light and healing, one step at a time. The snow had finally begun to melt, leaving behind patches of stubborn ice that glittered beneath the early spring sun. As the days grew longer, Clara watched with cautious hope as Owen continued to change. He still walked carefully, as if afraid the ground might give way, but there was a new determination in his stride. The coat, no longer stiff and new, had softened, its pockets frequently stuffed with crumpled notes and small treasures, evidence of a life that was beginning to expand beyond survival. Owen's friendship with Mia deepened. She introduced him to her circle of friends, a mix of kids who were drawn to her easy laughter and open heart. At first, Owen lingered at the edges of their games and conversations, observing but rarely joining in. Mia never pushed. But she always made room, leaving a spot for him in every circle and passing him the ball during every game of kickball. Slowly, her friends followed her lead, offering Owen tentative smiles and easygoing banter. One afternoon, Clara led the class in a discussion about family traditions. The topic was meant to encourage sharing, to help her students see the common threads that connected them, despite their differences. But as she scanned the room, she noticed Owen's expression turn guarded, his gaze fixed on his desk. Clara knew she had to tread carefully, pushing too hard might undo weeks of slow progress. "Owen," she asked gently, "would you like to share anything about your family's traditions?" His fingers curled around the edges of his notebook, whitening with pressure. "I'd rather not," he murmured, barely audible. "That's okay," Clara said quickly. "You can share whenever you're ready." The other students moved on, chattering excitedly about holiday dinners and annual trips. Clara pretended to focus on their stories, but she kept one eye on Owen. He seemed smaller somehow, as if trying to disappear into his chair. When the bell rang, he slipped out of the classroom faster than usual. That evening, Clara stayed late, organizing papers and worrying about her student. As she locked up, she heard footsteps echoing down the hallway. She turned to find Owen standing there, his face pale but determined. "Miss Bennett," he began, his voice strained. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course," she said, setting down her bag. She gestured for him to sit, and together they returned to the quiet of her classroom. For a long moment, Owen didn't speak. He stared at the rows of empty desks, his jaw tight. Clara waited, giving him space to find his words. Finally, he exhaled shakily. "My mom used to make hot chocolate," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Every winter when it snowed, she'd light candles and tell stories. It made everything feel warm." Clara nodded, her heart aching. "That sounds like a special memory." "She was everything," Owen said, his voice breaking. "When she died, it was like the world went cold. My dad and we tried to keep going, but it's not the same. We moved because we couldn't stay. Too many memories." Tears spilled down his cheeks, and he wiped them away angrily. "I hate feeling like this, like nothing will ever be warm again." Clara leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "Owen, you're not alone. Grief doesn't go away overnight, and it's okay to feel lost. But you don't have to go through it alone. I'm here. We're all here." He nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. For the first time, he didn't look away when their eyes met. "I want to remember her," he said quietly. "But I don't want to hurt all the time." "Then we'll find a way to honor her memory," Clara promised. Together. In the days that followed, Clara found ways to weave Owen's memories of his mother into his school life. She invited him to share stories of their camping trips during a science lesson on ecosystems, and when the class studied forests, she encouraged him to teach his classmates about the trees his mother had loved. Owen's passion for the outdoors shone through, and for brief moments he seemed to forget his sadness. One morning, Mia approached Clara with an idea. "Miss Bennett, what if we start a project in honor of Owen's mom? Something to help other people, like she helped him." Clara's heart swelled with pride. "What did you have in mind?" "We could plant a garden at school," Mia suggested. "A place where people can go when they're sad or need to think. Owen could help design it. It could be like a place of warmth." When Clara presented the idea to Owen, his eyes widened. "You'd really do that? For her?" "We'd do it for you," Mia said, smiling. "And for everyone who needs a little light." Owen nodded, his throat tight. "Okay, let's do it." The project quickly gained momentum. Students, parents, and teachers came together to clear a patch of land near the school's entrance. Clara guided the students as they dug and planted, turning soil over with cold, reddened hands. Owen worked tirelessly, choosing native plants his mother had loved and sketching out paths and seeding areas. He spoke more freely, his voice carrying over the hum of activity. Clara watched with pride as he became the heart of the project, sharing stories and memories with anyone who would listen. When the garden was finished, the community gathered for a dedication ceremony. Clara stood beside Owen as he spoke, his voice steady and strong. "This place is for everyone," he said, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "For everyone who's felt lost, or cold, or alone. It's a place to remember the people we've lost and to find hope again." Applause filled the air, mingling with birdsong and the rustle of leaves. Owen looked at the garden flowers swaying in the breeze, sunlight glinting off smooth stones, and felt something shift inside him. It wasn't a cure for grief, but it was a start. A place of warmth, built from compassion and care. In the weeks that followed, the garden became a beloved sanctuary. Students visited during lunch, teachers found moments of peace between classes, and community members stopped by to leave flowers or simply sit. Owen often lingered after school, tending to the plants and talking with Clara. The coat, now frayed and worn in places, still held warmth, and so did he. Clara continued to support him, knowing there would be hard days ahead. But she also saw strength growing in him, a quiet resilience forged by kindness and connection. The journey wasn't over, but they had come so far together. One spring afternoon, as petals fluttered through the air, Owen stood in the center of the garden, surrounded by friends. Mia nudged him playfully. "You're not invisible anymore, you know." Owen smiled. A true smile that reached his eyes. "I don't want to be." Spring was in full bloom, and the garden Owen had helped create flourished, drawing visitors daily. Clara often found herself pausing near its entrance, admiring the rows of flowers and native plants that swayed in the breeze. For many, it had become a place of peace and reflection, a testament to resilience, rooted in Owen's journey and nurtured by those who cared. But healing was never a straight path. As the school year drew to a close, Owen faced a new wave of uncertainty. His father, despite the temporary job offer that had stabilized their household for a few months, was once again struggling to find steady work. The strain was evident in Owen's eyes, and Clara noticed how he sometimes lingered by the garden longer than usual, as if soaking up strength from the place that had given him hope. One afternoon, as clouds rolled in and rain threatened to fall, Owen stayed after school, kneeling in the soil to pull out weeds. Clara watched from her classroom window for a few minutes before heading out to join him. She crouched beside him, the smell of damp earth filling the air. "Rough day?" she asked gently. Owen nodded, yanking a stubborn weed from the ground. "Dad's been really stressed. He says we might have to move again. He doesn't want to." But he paused, frustration etched across his face. "I don't want to leave, not now." Clara's heart sank. She had seen how hard Owen and his father had worked to build a new life in Maplewood, and the thought of uprooting again was heartbreaking. "I'm so sorry, Owen," she said, her voice heavy with empathy. "That's a lot to carry." I finally feel like things are getting better," Owen whispered, his eyes wet. "I don't want to lose it all." The rain began to drizzle, cool droplets soaking the soil around them. Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "You won't lose it," she said firmly. "We'll figure this out together. Whatever happens, you're not alone." The following week, Clara rallied the school community. She organized a meeting with parents, staff, and local leaders to brainstorm ways to support struggling families like Owen's. It wasn't just about finding a job for his father, it was about creating a network of resources and opportunities that would lift everyone up. Clara was determined, but she knew she couldn't do it alone. When she spoke at the meeting, her words carried the weight of every student she had ever helped, every challenge she had faced alongside them. "It takes all of us," she said, her voice steady but impassioned. "We have to be there for each other, especially when times are hard. No one should feel like they have to carry their burdens alone." Owen sat in the front row, his hands clenched in his lap. He felt vulnerable, exposed in front of the town he'd once tried to disappear into. But as people spoke up, offering ideas, sharing stories, and pledging support, something shifted within him. He wasn't just the recipient of their kindness anymore. He was part of something bigger. The town rallied. Clara helped coordinate a job fair, inviting local businesses and community leaders to offer training and employment opportunities. Owen's father attended, nervous but hopeful. With Clara's encouragement and the community's support, he connected with a small construction company looking for reliable workers. It wasn't a permanent solution, but it was a start, a chance to rebuild with dignity and stability. Amidst these efforts, Owen continued to grow. His friendships deepened, and he embraced his role in the student club he'd formed with Mia. Together they organized volunteer projects, bringing students to the garden to plant flowers, clean up litter, and paint colorful rocks with messages of hope. "Every small act matters," Owen told the group one day, echoing the words Clara had once spoken to him. "You never know who you might be helping." Summer brought warmth and new challenges. With school out, Owen spent more time at the community center, volunteering alongside Mia. One day, while organizing a donation drive, he noticed a boy about his age hovering near the entrance, his eyes darting nervously. The boy's clothes were worn, his sneakers barely holding together. Owen approached slowly, recognizing the mix of fear and uncertainty all too well. "Hey," he said softly, "I'm Owen. Need any help?" The boy hesitated, then nodded. "I'm Leo," he whispered. "I don't really know what I'm doing here." "That's okay," Owen replied. "I didn't either at first." He led Leo inside, introducing him to Mia and showing him around. As they worked together, Leo opened up in small bursts, sharing snippets of his life. Owen listened carefully, offering quiet encouragement. By the end of the day, Leo was laughing at one of Mia's jokes, the tension in his shoulders gone. Clara, who had stopped by to check on the drive, watched the scene unfold with a mix of pride and gratitude. The boy she had once helped was now extending the same kindness to others. As the weeks passed, Leo became a regular presence, and Owen took him under his wing. They worked side by side in the garden, cleaned up parks, and distributed supplies to families in need. For Owen, it was a reminder of how far he had come and of the power of compassion to transform even the heaviest burdens. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Owen sat in the garden with Clara and Mia. The air was warm, filled with the scent of blooming flowers. Fireflies danced around them, their glow soft and fleeting. "Do you ever think about how different everything could have been?" Owen asked quietly. "If no one had cared. If I'd just stayed invisible." "I think about it all the time," Clara admitted, her voice soft. "And it reminds me why we have to keep caring. Why every act matters." Mia leaned back, gazing at the stars that had begun to dot the sky. "You're not invisible anymore, Owen. You're like a light. You help people find their way." Owen smiled, the weight in his chest lifting. He still carried grief, still faced challenges. But he also carried hope, woven together from the love and kindness of those who had refused to let him fall. The garden, bathed in the gentle glow of fireflies, stood as a living testament to the power of small, compassionate acts. It would continue to grow, just as Owen would, rooted in connection, resilience, and the enduring belief that no one should have to face the cold alone. As summer gave way to autumn, the days grew shorter and cooler, signaling the start of a new school year. Owen returned to Maplewood Middle with a renewed sense of purpose, but he also knew that the journey was far from over. Life still had its share of challenges. His father's work was steady but demanding, and financial stability remained fragile. Yet there was a quiet strength within Owen now, a resilience born from the compassion he had experienced and given in return. One morning, as the crisp fall air bit at his cheeks, Owen walked past the garden. It was still thriving, but some of the flowers were beginning to wither, their petals curling in preparation for winter's return. He knelt down and pulled a few weeds, feeling a pang of sadness. This place had come to symbolize so much loss, hope, growth. He wasn't ready to see it fade. Mia approached, carrying a box of small saplings. "Hey," she said, setting the box down. "I thought we could plant these before the frost hits. They'll grow back in the spring." Owen smiled, the heaviness in his chest easing. "Good idea. Let's do it." As they dug holes and planted the saplings, other students joined in. The garden became a hub of activity once again, laughter and chatter filling the air. Clara watched from the sidelines, a proud smile on her face. It was a reminder that even in times of change, new growth was always possible. But just as life seemed to settle, another challenge emerged. One afternoon, while sorting supplies for a community event, Owen received a call from his father. His voice was strained. "I'm sorry, Owen. I've hurt my back. I don't know if I can keep working like this." Fear gripped Owen's heart. They had come so far, worked so hard to find stability. The thought of slipping backward was almost too much to bear. But as he hung up the phone, he felt a familiar hand on his shoulder. It was Clara. Her eyes filled with concern. "We'll figure it out," she said, her voice steady. "You're not alone in this." True to her word, Clara mobilized the community once again. The construction company where Owen's father worked agreed to support his recovery, offering lighter duties and flexible hours. Volunteers helped with meals, errands, and financial assistance. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was enough to keep hope alive. Owen's role in the student club became even more vital. He threw himself into their projects, organizing food drives, tutoring sessions, and outreach programs for struggling families. The club's reach expanded beyond the school, touching lives throughout the town. People saw Owen not just as a boy who had been helped, but as a leader and an advocate for others. One day, while preparing for a volunteer fair, Clara called Owen aside. "There's someone I'd like you to meet," she said, leading him to a quiet room. Inside was a woman with kind eyes and an air of quiet determination. "Owen, this is Ms. Patel," Clara said. "She runs a mentorship program for students interested in community work. I thought you might want to learn more." Owen shook Ms. Patel's hand, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. As they spoke, she explained how the program paired young leaders with experienced mentors, offering training and opportunities to create lasting change. "I've heard a lot about you," she said warmly. "Your story, your work, it's inspiring. I think you'd be a great fit." Owen's mind raced. He had never imagined himself as a leader, let alone someone who could inspire others. But he thought of the garden, the students who had found comfort there, and the people who had stood by him when he needed it most. He nodded slowly. "I'd like that." The mentorship program opened new doors for Owen. He attended workshops, learned about community organizing, and met peers who shared his passion for helping others. Each experience broadened his understanding of what it meant to create change. He spoke at events, sharing his journey with audiences who saw themselves in his story. With every speech, his voice grew stronger, and his words carried the weight of lived experience and hard-won hope. One evening, after returning from a workshop, Owen found himself standing in the garden. The moon cast a silver glow over the plants, and the air was crisp and still. He thought about everything that had brought him here: the cold winters, the loneliness, the warmth of a simple coat. He knelt down and traced his fingers over the soil, feeling the life it held. "I wish you could see this, Mom," he whispered. "I think you'd be proud." The wind rustled the leaves, and for a moment, Owen felt as if she were there, watching over him. Tears welled in his eyes, but they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude for Clara, for Mia, for the community that had lifted him up, for the chance to make a difference. As the school year progressed, Owen continued to grow. He mentored younger students, helped organize events, and advocated for those in need. The garden, now a year-round project, became a symbol of resilience for the entire town. People came to reflect, to heal, and to find hope in its quiet beauty. One snowy evening, as winter crept in once more, Owen found himself back in Clara's classroom. They sipped hot chocolate, the steam curling into the air. The coat that had started it all still hung on the back of his chair, worn, frayed, but cherished. "Thank you," Owen said quietly, his voice filled with emotion. "For everything." Clara smiled, warmth shining in her eyes. "You did the hard part, Owen. You chose to keep going." He nodded, knowing she was right. He had chosen to keep going, to open himself to kindness, to trust others, and to become a light in the darkness. And he knew there was still more work to do, more lives to touch, more hope to share. Together they sat in companionable silence, watching the snow fall outside. It was cold, but inside there was warmth, a warmth built from compassion, resilience, and the enduring belief that even in the hardest times, light could always be found.